Hello, and welcome to another episode of In My Experience with yours truly, Christine DeGinto. This podcast is a space where I speak from lived experience. The moments that shaped me, challenged me, and changed the way that I understand myself in the world. The awakenings, the breakdowns, the moments that cracked me open, asked me to stay present, be embodied, and be honest with myself. I share my stories not to persuade or define truth for anyone else, but to offer perspective, to explore the gray areas we don't often have language for, to slow things down and listen more closely to what's happening beneath the surface. You'll hear solo episodes where I reflect on my own initiations, spiritual gifts, and the systems that tried to define me. And conversations with guests who have walked strange, beautiful, and sometimes painful paths of their own and come back with wisdom to share with us. I invite you to take what resonates, leave the rest, and trust your own experience as valid. Thank you for being here. This is In My Experience. Before we jump in, I just want to introduce today's guest. I'm sitting down with Erin French from Natural Heart Alchemy for a conversation that spans over a two-part series. Erin's been doing this work for over 25 years, starting with communication with the spirit of his grandfather, and it really opened into a lifelong relationship with mediumship and listening beyond the veil. What I love about Erin is how grounded his work is. He has a background in science, but he also works deeply with Daoist and Tantric teachings and the Akashic Records. The way that he holds all of that together feels very calm, clear, and human. Through Natural Heart Alchemy, Erin offers Akashic Records readings, ancestral healing, and mediumship sessions, and his work tends to bring through really precise messages while he is also helping people feel regulated and supported in their bodies. Not just expanded, but actually resourced. In this conversation, we talk about the Akashic Records and the Akashic Field, mentorship and community, shamanism, plant medicine, and even dragons. How the myth and symbolism shape our perception and memory. I'm really grateful for this conversation and for Erin's presence, and I'm excited to share our conversation with you. Let's dig into it. Welcome, our first guest to the show, Erin French. Thank you for being here with us.
It's such a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Erin and I have known each other for about coming on 3 years now, I would say.
Probably.
We did the first round of the Akashic Holographic Mastery with Amy Belair, and that's how we met, right?
Yeah. Amy's so
So
fantastic. And that was such a deeply immersive, almost year, whatever it was, 9 months, year,
it
whatever it
was
was.
8 months,
8
yes. And
months.
then we
It felt like a year
continued.
for me, right? It was so deep.
Yes.
And, becoming friends in that forum where we met a couple times a week, some weeks, and then dropped deeply into reading other people's Akashic records. Even then, like not specifically knowing any quote details about each other's life, we were, collectively going into the Akashic field together, and therefore, like just learning who you were as a soul.
Mm-hmm.
And then only later, months later, even a year later, like learning more details around like the day to day. But like, who the fuck cares? Pardon my French, because the soul connection is there of resonance of like, oh, this person is here with me in this journey at this, doing this thing that I'm doing, and therefore, like, we're friends, right?
Yes, absolutely. And luckily, right, we have, being part of that type of group, we have access to each other. We would kind of bounce things off of each other. I don't know that you really needed my guidance much, but I sure did ask for yours. And
We all do, though. I was just working with somebody here in Pisac who is I'm down in the Sacred Valley in Peru, who is sort of a teacher herself, and she was sort of apologizing for wanting some support from me. And I was like, no, 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 like we
Mhm.
all need support from each other. We all have our blind spots that we can't see, no matter quote
Yes.
where we are on the journey, and no matter how much support we can offer others, no matter how much we consider ourselves a leader, a teacher, a mentor, or whatever, like all that's irrelevant. Like we still have our own work to do, and we still have our blind
Mhm.
spots and our parts of ourselves that, I need you to uncover, and my other, friends and colleagues who can like see me with your fresh eyes and not from my blind spots.
Absolutely. And it's such a it's validating and grounding to seek advice from other healers. Every healer needs a healer, you know.
So much so, so
Yeah.
much so, like grounding and validating, and also, especially with the Akashic Field, um, receiving the grace of like, for me, it's like a mist of like angelic higher energy, just like when I'm in the Akashic, just like flowing, floating, misting all around me and also the other person I'm working with, and just surrounding me with that sort of eternal guidance of all things that just naturally puts everything in deep perspective and
Mhm.
naturally creates an environment where the smallness of maybe some situation in my life in any given moment just dissolves naturally,
Mhm.
easily, spontaneously. So much fun.
It's magic, right? The
Yeah,
magic that we can access ourselves and the
yeah,
beauty of everyone's capability of doing that. And I think
yeah,
what I valued learning in that class so much, particularly working with several other people in the class, having those readings, and we would give one person a reading, but each one of us would take our turn and things would connect in ways that was extremely validating. So that was, if you are out there and you have been wanting to hone your gifts and tap into the akasha, the frequency field, the subconscious of the collective consciousness to receive any kind of information that you would like for your soul or your purpose, your intentions, or guidance in any way, it happens. I mean, it's sometimes I feel like people look at it like, oh, that's when I really need help. But it's something that you can access at any time for even the smallest things. And it really, I feel the more connected that I have worked to achieve with this field, the more connected I am every day. I don't have to sit and tune in and have
yeah,
silence and have all of the have the environment just how I need it. That insight just comes now. So it's,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's so fun to think back at, myself and all of us, how not nervous per se, but like tentative, hesitant we
Hmm.
were to fully speak
Yes.
our insights and our truths that were coming through.
Hmm.
Thinking back to that now, I just smile with like some tenderness of like, yeah, you know, it's like we didn't, from one perspective, we learned some things, of course, but from one perspective, like that wasn't what we learned wasn't important. It was just like deepening into the trust with each other of who we were, who we are in every moment.
Hmm.
And it's giving to today, like, yeah, we learned, I've learned from that and other sources, like, okay, here's methods, quote, methods, and this is how you're supposed to connect to the Akashic field, and et cetera.
Hmm.
Yeah, as you say too, I don't do any of that
Hmm.
ever these
Yeah.
days.
It's
I mean, I'll make sure that I'm grounded and connected, and my
yes.
space is clear in those things, which are just, good basic energetic hygiene. But in
Yes.
terms of the specific prayers or sequence of connection, no, I just connect.
Yeah.
And, in sessions now too, it's kind of funny. I say to people, kind of, I say it kind of for to make it seem like it's something. I say like, okay, I'm going to close my eyes now and connect up, and it'll be about a minute. I always say like it'll be about a minute before like I start speaking from that place.
Hmm.
And I kind of laugh every time, and I might stop saying it. I'm not sure
Hmm.
because it's always like I don't know, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 0 seconds. I'm just right,
Yes.
I say a minute because it gives me time just to sort of land and integrate myself and like
To
smooth the
give
field.
words to what you just received.
But it's
It's
always, almost always, just okay within a few seconds of like, okay, it's so clearly coming through. We're just right
yeah.
there.
Hmm.
Here's a question for you. Like, do you see the Akashic Field as a
I
library?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
I don't.
not at
Yeah.
all.
So, still so many people like I'm so deep in it now that I'm like, you don't know what this Akashic field is, but still so, the majority of people I talk to still, even people who come to me for readings, even if they pay money and book a session with me, they still like, okay, but what is this?
Mhm, mhm,
And now I mostly see the Akashic field as like an asteroid belt of density of energy.
mhm, mhm. A frequency
Because
field of information. It's
right? It's like, okay, if there's no time because there's not, and all space and all time is here now,
Mhm.
and all the imprint from every human and every other being in this realm across all time is still here.
Yeah.
And so
I
where in the here it? And
I
so I'm
saw
like,
this.
okay, for me, it's like this frequency band that there's a density to it where all
Yes.
this information is. And it's like to me, again, like an asteroid belt in the energetic field. Does that
Yeah.
resonate with you at
Like a
all? I'm curious.
VHS tape or a disc or a all
Okay,
the
okay.
technology that
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
had to record
Love
things,
that.
right?
Yeah,
I
love
I
that.
heard recently that scientists have some measure of proof, I believe, or else I wouldn't have been reading about it, that there was what they determined is black holes, the outer ring of a black hole contains all of the information of whatever has passed through it.
Right,
And when
right.
I heard that, I was like, oh my God. Of course it
No,
does.
that's right, exactly. And in some level, even quote the white space or the empty space between in some way contains all the information, but maybe just in a way that's more diffuse and harder to tune into. So these
Mhm,
places of density, like you say, a black hole scientifically, or even
mhm,
what I'm saying, this asteroid belt, which is just air quotes,
mhm, mhm.
of the Akashic field, this dense band of a frequency that's sort of in our realm, but also maybe on the edges of it, whatever that
Yeah.
means, because it's all
Yeah.
here. When there's places of more density, that's just where it's easier for us to go and pluck out the threads that are relevant to us in the here and now.
And it's interesting that you're describing it as having density because I mean, we talk about that all the time, frequency and all that, frequency,
Yeah,
vibration. It's all there is, right?
yeah,
Well, it's when I previously, when I was working to tune into the Akasha, when I was learning under Amy, a lot of the time what I would experience is my ear would be like ta da 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 da, like tapping
I
bubbles.
love that.
And it would be like pressure. It's like if your ears are popping, you know? And
Yeah.
I would get my sinus would pop, my like left, my usually my right side, it just kind of goes click, like on the inside. I, d-
Uh-huh.
I can't describe that. I think that is my body's physical response to tuning to that frequency. Like it's just for whatever reason, I guess clairsentience is very strong in me, and my body registers
Hmm.
energies around me. Whether I sharpen my discernment to them or not is still in question. But I do recognize that I feel that shit. So,
And then, for me, part of, backing up for me, for my history, like I first learned I was a medium like over 25 years ago when my grandfather passed away. And through a whole story of circumstance, I didn't know he had died until like 9 months later.
mm,
But right when he passed, there was this week when I was, telling my friends, and I journaled this, I was like thinking about him all the time. And when I got home, I needed to go see him, and he lived,
mhm,
states away. And then, it was really this intense period of connection with him that at the time, I was younger and just scientific minded and didn't, I was like, oh, I'm just thinking of him right now a lot. And then
mhm,
9 months later, I learned he passed, and it was my dad told me later he passed. And I was like, wait a minute, Dad, wait, when exactly did he die? And it was
mhm.
exactly back when I had that
Wow.
feeling.
Yeah.
And because of that disconnect, I was like, oh my goodness, he was talking to me. It
Mhm,
was clear the way it all worked out in my
mhm,
circumstance. So I've been talking to, and then my great grandmother came to me years later, really intensely, and like I had like an 18-month like long, I'll say, a conversation with her, and I realized how my ancestors were like controlling me in certain ways and wanting to live out their ancestral unmet
mhm.
karmas with me. And
Wow.
with her, it was so strong. I realized I was being controlled by her unmet needs so
Mm,
strongly. I had to devise my own method of, I'll say, exorcism in a strong way, but
mhm.
untangling that
Yes.
and allowing her to release me
Mhm,
from her
mhm.
control.
Yes.
So like that's how I started all this really. And so now, even when I'm going up into the Akashic field, like the first, when I'm opening up into the higher realms, the first band I enter is the ancestors.
Mhm.
And, when I'm working with somebody, like if they want to, so that's a realm where like if the ancestors want to speak in behalf of this person I'm working with, then they'll like push their messages to me. And I
Mm.
don't have a choice really. And then when I
Yes.
go just past that and tune my radio just for to pass that, then I get into this whole band of ancestors of angels and spirit guides broadly. It's a
Yes.
big
Yes.
category of beings that, spirit guides, angels, and beyond that we all have all around us. And then it's just past that where I enter the Akashic field. So like that's
Hmm.
that's my sort of, and I don't think that's universal for everyone, but for me, that's the path that I go through
It
astrally to
makes
get to these
sense.
realms.
Makes sense to
Um,
me. That's how I see it also. I'm not quite,
yeah.
I don't see spirits, not even necessarily in my inner vision,
Mhm.
often. So that's not, I'm not quite,
Sure.
but I feel it that same way. I feel it that same way, frequency wise. Yeah.
So like the information, and then now there's so with this global ascension that's occurring right now, there are so many other beings and other categories of intelligence and life forms that are emerging for us. So I
Hmm.
have friends who are very deeply seeing, fairies of various types. There's different names for fairies broadly across the globe. And I'll just
Hmm.
use that as a category of like, there's a whole range of beings that are sort of fairy beings,
Devas
just
and
exactly the
yeah,
whole range. And
yeah.
then I have other friends, just talking to one yesterday who is deeply immersed with the mermaid rising. And I have a few friends globally around the world that are like, oh, now I'm deeply connected and receiving intelligence from the mermaids.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then for me personally, it's dragons.
Yes,
The
same.
dragons,
Dragons.
the
Yes.
dragons are so deeply emerging.
I was thinking about
Um,
dragons
and
earlier
what they're
today.
telling me is like,
Yeah.
as the earth rises, as we're rising up,
Hmm.
they're not emerging as much as we're at this time again coming up into the realm of frequency where they have always inhabited. So like
Yes.
we're joining them once again, and they're like, oh, you can see us now, kind of thing. Like, oh, welcome, and
Yes.
let's hang out with you as the earth and us individually raises our frequency. So
I'm
it's
sure
so fun. It's so much fun right now to be alive.
it is, right? I'm sure
It's
you
so
have
good.
gone down those wormholes of dragons in history depicted in art that have been covered up and concealed and changed and altered throughout
I
the
I
past.
love this so much. Thank you. Like they've been giving me these messages.
Hmm.
Dragons globally have been perceived in different ways, in different, and there's dragons all over everywhere of different levels and ages, and they've
Yes.
shown me like dragons. They're like, okay, like there's a few right now. There's mostly two that talk to me. There's a sky dragon and an earth dragon that talk to me pretty regularly,
Yeah.
but they're like, we're just two. There's as many types, quote, types of dragons as there are like types of humans globally. And if you talk
Yes.
to, a human, somewhere across the globe, they might have a different message than from you, but we're
Yes.
still all the same frequency of dragonness, just like you're all humans. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I was going
No,
somewhere else with
so
that.
you were
Now
saying the different levels, the different types, the
different
different.
levels and types.
Mhm.
Um,
When I was driving earlier,
oh,
when
we
I
were
was
talking
thinking
about
about the difference between reptilians and dragons. And I was like, absolutely not. Dragons are sacred. Like,
so different entirely.
yes.
And
So like
even and even
they're
I'm gonna say like across cultures there have been many, many representations, and I'm gonna call them like just generically my word is gonna be like snake-like dragons.
yes,
So, there's been these more cosmic snake creatures,
Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl,
Yeah.
and the Chinese and Eastern versions of
Hmm.
serpents.
Hmm.
That, and for me, what I've been shown in that intelligence is that those are actually a deeper, primordial, more ancient version of more origin level being that are
Hmm.
more cosmic, more beyond Earth. Those have come from
Hmm.
an intelligence beyond this realm, but are part of this realm. And for
Hmm.
me, dragons, and what I've been shown is that dragons are not necessarily a direct descendant of those, but a newer
Hmm.
incarnation on this Earth realm. But when I say newer, they're still like beyond, beyond, beyond even the oldest gods that we can imagine. That they're still ancient and ancient but newer relatively than those original serpent dragon beings that were part of the origin story. In the West also, Ouroboros, right?
Hmm. Yes.
Similar energies.
Yes. And I think both of us too also very interested and drawn towards shamanism, understanding that death is part of life and all of the circle and all of the it's I think you and I had always been, especially in the group that we were in where we met, you and I were always very more aligned with understanding the darkness in all of us and understanding the darkness without
Yeah.
fear and without judgment. It's more of like understanding for the propulsion of like where we need to go. Like we're not looking we're not looking back and pointing fingers. It's more like, what can we learn from this?
All
And you can't
things
be
just
afraid to
are.
look at it because then you're not going to learn from it. And it is here for us to learn from. So, yeah.
Right? Like all things just are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we, like you mentioned shamanism, when we, I'll just say like one very simple definition of shamanism I'll just make up on the spot would be like shamanism might be from this perspective just deeply connecting with the physical world and the earth and the elementals of this place and time that we're in to connect to the spiritual totality of the universe. I just made that
Hmm.
up, right? Some version
Yeah.
of that where we're using our
Hmm.
body and the earth and the physical tools of this realm
Hmm.
to then transcend the
Be the
3D,
bridge, the
be
bridge
the
between
bridge.
worlds. Yeah.
And when you do that, right, you don't know what's going to emerge. You don't know where you're going to go. If you know where you're going to go, then actually you're not doing the practice, then you're imagining it, right? Because,
Yes. Yes.
when you open the door to the mystery, what emerges is what emerges. And
Hmm.
there's an infinite possibility that we could say goes from light to dark. To say it
Hmm.
that way goes from one direction to the other, which are actually the same.
Yes.
And it's a
Speaking of
totality. And so if you
Ouroboros,
say
so
like, oh,
about
anything
that.
on
Yeah.
this realm is bad and anything over here is good,
Yeah.
well then immediately already you're actually not entering truth. You're limiting
Hmm.
and entering a filtered version, which then becomes artificial, and then that
Being a false light.
creates
Yeah.
a twist in the threads of space and time that creates actually knots, which creates more karmic problems, difficulties, challenges,
Yes.
to use that language as we go down the road, right? Um,
Absolutely.
backing up for a second, where you mentioned all of the, I'll specifically think about like the European images of dragons
Yes.
and the mythologies of dragons and
Hmm.
how they've been carried through time.
Yes.
Um,
I was thinking
and
about that yesterday. Why do you think it's beyond my comprehension that people would not believe that they were real? If you look at historically
it's
the
been so
where they've been
long. Yeah.
depicted through many different cultures over such a long span of time, why would you think they weren't real?
Because that was an intentional, so the keepers of, way back, in lost time, like this um diminishment of the realization of the truth happened deep, 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 many, many, many thousands of years ago. And
Hmm.
they hid, not just dragons, but these elemental truths that were being suppressed in the children's fables.
Hmm.
And that's how they kept them alive. They're like,
Yeah.
oh no, we're going to tell these stories, but we're going to also pretend that this is make believe. And therefore,
Yes.
they wouldn't be prosecuted and stamped out. They were allowed to continue because the stories
Hmm.
were just told as being, this is a children's tale that has no truth. And therefore, the powers that be that were in charge of suppression would let them survive through, again, many thousands of years. But if
Yeah.
we look clearly with open eyes and receive, for me personally, when I receive the transmissions from these realms that we're emerging
Hmm.
into, dragons and beyond, it's not
Yes.
just dragons, but all of these children's mythologies actually are like, oh my goodness, they're containing this vibration of deep, deep truth that is not present anywhere else. And
Hmm.
certainly it's been simplified and twisted in certain ways, but the deep, deep truths actually are the open secret that emerge clearly once you open up to higher frequencies. And so,
Yeah.
like with dragon lore, like one thing is very common across cultures, from my perspective, would be this view that dragons exist, at the ends of the ocean, or maybe like deep in a cave or on top of a mountain, in these really, quote, distant, inaccessible places. And what the dragons have shared around me is like, yeah, the truth in that is that we are living in the vibration that's between this realm and the realms beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So deep in a cave or deep across the ocean or whatever, high on a mountain is a symbol of being
Yes,
on the edges of this realm, which is true.
absolutely.
They actually
Yes.
exist on a frequency band that's right here, but it's just beyond the previous three-dimensional constricted version of Earth. And for me, they are the boundaries. So for me, it's like imagine, a boat in a water floating or an iceberg or something where half is beneath the water and half is above the water.
Yeah.
And for dragons, it's like half their frequency is in this realm entirely and half is in the realm beyond. And they're sort of floating on that. They are the guardians of that boundary. And so then the other piece that I think I wanted to bring forward about dragons is their fire, their breath of destruction. There's these stories of, in these stories from the era of like knights and maidens that needed to be saved. Like those stories are about purity of heart. So
Yes.
if you're going there with anger, which is difference and distinction, if there's
Mm-hmm.
any clarity of like this and that, good and bad, or anything like that, those knights in this story that would go and like find the dragon would get burnt up by the fire.
Mm-hmm.
But when a knight would have like the pure heart, they would be
Yes.
able to be, either quote kill the dragon, but really,
Yo, so-
even see the dragon as goodness and the coexist with them. And that's because the fire of dragons, this is what the dragons are telling me, the quote fire of dragons is simply the breath of flame from the realm beyond, which if you're
Mhm.
not pure of the frequency of the next realm, you get burnt up by it. You cannot exist there until you've raised your frequency into the frequency of what's next. So
Yeah.
the fire is the fire of, from one perspective, like non-duality and the union of all things. Again,
Mhm.
when you're there with anger, indifference, and distinction, you get burnt up by that and you cannot survive anymore in that.
Yes.
Isn't that kind
That
of a
makes a
fun way
lot
to
of
see it?
sense. Yes. Yes. And it makes so much sense. I know I've had my own connections with an earth dragon, I would say. Like she's very, very, very deep in the earth, and she is awake and she is patient because she could just get up and it would fuck shit up. But she is being patient and she is being calm. And she is so it's a that's I sometimes connect with her and I feel very empowered in my breath and in my perseverance. So it's like what very it's my good friend to connect to when I need a little bit of heart energy.
I mean, they live so long. I'm shown that there's different ages of dragons, but even the new ones. So like the two that connect to me regularly are relatively young, but they're like, no, we're still like Atlantis, Lemuria are like recent for them. Like
Wow.
they're so old that like those events are like, oh yeah, those were just little like blips and they go way back lost in the mists of time. So
Yeah.
like their patience level, you know, our lifetimes individually are just such a little snap.
Hmm.
Their timeline is so vast
Hmm.
that patience to us is because it's simply just a blink, literally.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so they have all the time in the world for our
Yeah.
little lifetimes to like come around to like hanging out with them. They're like, oh yeah, and they've seen this rise and fall. They've seen civilizations. Even those two that we're aware. I'm just going to use these two that many of us know about. Atlantis, and then before that, Lemuria, those even were very far apart relatively,
Mhm.
and there was collapses in between those, and they've seen the rise and fall of those. And I've been told, numerous other cycles like that with civilizations that are names don't exist for me. So they're like, it
Yes.
doesn't matter. There's like
And it
multiple
also
other ones.
doesn't matter. Sorry to say, not in a heartless way, but like to us, it doesn't matter. It's the idea of it. It's the understanding of how it rose and fell. That's all we really need to know.
And
Right?
the rising, again, who knows? But what I'm shown is that the rising that we're just now entering in the very infancy steps of entering is the energetic wave that we're riding now is beyond the density, beyond the expansion of either of those. So any
Mhm.
stories we have heard about Atlantis or Lemuria or about the fantastic, magical, mystical ways that those beings and civilizations survived and existed,
Mhm.
anything we've heard there will be child's play to us as we move forward into this new age. What we're
Wow.
entering is beyond that, in because there's waves and waves, and there's smaller waves of time and bigger waves of time, and this
Mhm.
upswing is a bigger wave of time that's going to carry us quote farther, whatever that means. Like I can't even
Absolutely.
comprehend what that might be because it's like
Yes.
beyond this dimensional geometric form to say,
Yes.
I don't know yet. But we can, this awakening, we can all feel, those of us who are awake can feel this wash of expansion. And it's like overwhelming for so many people. It's fast, it's strong, it's harsh. If people who are hanging out are being knocked over by this wave of awakening, people are
Yeah.
being, people left and right are being just smacked around. Mm, until we choose to wake up and align with the energy of the way because there's no other choice for us. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Wu Wei, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, it's, I just had a thought. Let me see if I can.
Yeah.
No, I think it's gone. Oh, well. Speaking of having thoughts leave our heads and then kind of change the subject to rewiring our thoughts and
Mm,
choosing to align with things and believe things and trust our intuition. You and I both share another thing in common, which is plant medicine.
yeah.
And I I am much less experienced than you, I would say. But what are some of your takeaways? How long have you been working with plant medicine in your life? What are some of your like major takeaways that you would say to someone who has experienced anxiety, depression, trauma in their life and they've never worked with plant medicine? Like, how would you elevator pitch that to them?
I mean, first, depending on, how deep in the anxiety, depression, worry this person was, I would make sure in the conversation and make sure in the relationship that there was a baseline of trust and understanding before I would push into this. But let's just assume that this is a friend that, we have a deep level of trust and understanding, and we can go forward with this conversation of like, hey, here's some ways of expansion. I mean, broadly, these beautiful allies are part of this earth realm here specifically for human awakening and also many other beings, but they are
Mhm.
tools of transformation that were offered for us from this perspective by the universe for us to they're like shortcuts, they're like cheat codes, they're like wormholes for us to see who we are. Of
Mhm.
course, I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast and anyone who's awake spiritually understands some version, there's different ways to say this, but that we are all born and choose to be born here on earth because we are cut off from the collective understanding that we are God in all things and
Mhm.
universal consciousness. And that's, from one perspective, that's the reason that we choose to be born here on earth is to feel the smallness. This is how I'm showing this is like we choose to feel the smallness of earth so that the joy and the rapturous, orgasmic connection of coming back into universal consciousness, that like whoosh is like a roller coaster ride or like
Yeah.
a rush, beyond belief.
Mhm.
And there's no other realm in the universes that I've been shown that allow this type of disconnection and reconnection. And it's like it's a rush for our souls. It's there's this disconnection. We have all of our pain, we have all of our traumas and all the things that are difficult for us that we all live through in our own ways. Those are there to show us the level of darkness, and it's like riding higher on a roller coaster so that when we come back in connection with the universe and all things and eternal love, it's that much longer of a ride for us to get back to all things.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that all said, like plant medicines open the doors. And when I say plant medicines too, I also include the psilocybin mushrooms as part of that.
Mhm. Yes.
It's like we say plant medicines, and I'm always like, I'm not ignoring you, fungus. Like, love you too.
Yes,
Because
absolutely. Yeah,
it's
no, totally
all of these
included
natural
from
allies that we have um, are there to, for me, I say, like, open the gates of consciousness and allow us to travel more freely to see the reality of all things as they are, still from the perspective of wherever we are in connection to our ego. So we still see them self-referentially, but it
Mhm.
opens doors and gives us a wider view than we've had before.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I first did mushrooms in college. Some friends of mine, you mentioned Joshua Tree. I went to school in San Diego, and some friends of mine were like, "We got some mushrooms. We're going out to Joshua Tree," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, let's go." And so we took mushrooms and all went out individually by ourselves, separated out onto the rocks in Joshua Tree.
Hmm.
and had a beautiful afternoon night of a deep journey. Yeah, and I've never been the same. I've never been the same. It was like a deep reset, even back that I can remember specifically, like it reprogrammed my mind. I felt like I was reset into clarity and openness and purpose, but not in a I need to get
Pushing
things
back.
done way, but in just a deep alignment with the universe way.
Mm.
And it's not been every year, but I've told myself, and there's been years when I haven't, but like almost every year for years, I would like, I need to do mushrooms at least once a year. And sometimes it'll go a couple years and I do them and I go, okay, just to get the clarity and direction of like opening things up
Yeah.
since then. And then since that, it's really been in the last 5 years that I've been doing medicine work beyond psilocybin in a very specific journey of exploration. Uh,
Hmm.
and for me, it might be different from some other people. And the medicine has even shown me like this was on purpose, right? These medicines are intentional, but I've gone through, I had a guru back in the early 2000s. I sat with Ram Dass back in the late 90s. I've been on a spiritual journey that beyond plant medicines for decades.
Yeah.
So I've done really intense spiritual work of various types across traditions for many, many, many years. And through that, I've had my own awakenings beyond plant medicine
Hmm.
that now that I'm doing the medicine more deeply has allowed me perhaps to see it from a different view than someone who's coming in still deeply in their shadow, deeply in their traumas.
Yeah.
Um, and from that, I just have so much appreciation for the power of these tools,
Hmm.
the power of these allies. They are like everything is a spirit. Going back to shamanism, I mean, one of the deep fundamental beliefs that I think needs to occur in some way if you're going to work with these medicines is that, they're not just a plant or a mushroom, they are a spirit. They're
Yes,
an energetic
absolutely.
intelligence that has its own life, air
Hmm.
quotes. They
Hmm.
have
And
their own
influence and way of speaking.
intelligence across time and space, and they're here specifically to help us.
Hmm.
They are absolutely allies. But each ally, a mushroom, the way, psilocybin works is very different from peyote, is very different from
Yes.
ayahuasca, is very different from wachuma, is
Yeah.
very different from, the other allies that we have. So there's
Hmm.
different threads and flavors of how they work with us, but they open the gates and show us who we are in ways that, I did it with meditation and it took decades. And it's not different. It's just they can show us who we are in ways that can cut through time and space.
Yeah.
Then I'll say, and then I'm going to let you, and then I'll say, like, we still, from my perspective, we need to also do our own individual work outside of the medicine.
Oh,
So there's a
yes.
bunch of people that I disagree with, but there's still a lot of people that say, and I hear this, and I've talked to people, and they say, no, like ayahuasca in particular is my path. That's what I do. And there are people that only do that and don't do other work to integrate beyond the ayahuasca. And for me personally, I'll just, say, like, for me, that's a big red flag, big cautionary tale. And from my perspective, my bias, when I see talking to people like that, what I
Hmm.
see is it's easy to again get sort of wrapped up and have to say this, some delusion and sort of misperceptions if we don't go back and then do our own integration work on our own.
Hmm. Yes. Integration is like more than half of it, I would say, probably
Yeah.
75%. 25% is partaking and relating with the spirit of the medicine, having your experience, getting the insight, and then you have to integrate that every day after that continuously. So that's like the work, actually, it comes
Yeah.
after, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes not even, I mean, sometimes it's before. Sometimes I've gone into plant medicine journeys with different intentions and also with no intentions or expectations. And it's like, obviously, well, so I went in with intention and expectations the first, second time. Third, fourth time, I said, obviously, I don't know what I'm looking for. I need you to show me. So I'm just here for you to show me. And that's when it really took off. But so it's sort of like having an open mind, just like being surrendering for the spirit to show you what is needed because you can trust that they will they'll give you what you're ready for, but they won't give you what you're not ready for. So sometimes it's like, do I even need to do this? It's funny. At my most recent retreat, one of the other participants was sharing in, you know, after our ceremony, and she was saying that when she was sitting with the medicine, she was asking, what is necessary? And then she's like, is this even necessary, what I'm doing? Do I even have to take this medicine? Is that necessary? And it just like really went into this tailspin of like, what is necessary?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me laugh because she thought it was funny. But I had a very fast spiritual awakening, and I suddenly had abilities that, though they are my abilities, they weren't trained for, and they were not supposed to come on board that quickly and at that time. So it was very destabilizing, but it was also the validation that I received from plant medicine was I was able to see the same way. Like I looked up in the sky and I saw the grid lines, and I could see, sometimes I would notice people's faces changing a bit. Maybe they had an entity in them, and they would start to come out and I would see that. So it was validating for me experiencing plant medicine because I had never done that before
Mhm.
and had a spiritual experience of being able to see and sense through different dimensions, thinking I'm crazy, right? And then slowly calming down, doing Reiki, grounding, all this stuff. And then, within a year, I did my first plant medicine experience. And as soon as I was in the journey, I was like, wow, this is what I felt like. This is the type of stuff that I saw. This is the level of hearing that I had. Like, so I'm not crazy. And like, but then I was like, was I drugged? And I was like, no, no one drugged me for a month. You know what I mean? So I was like, this,
I love that so much, though. I love that story because, again, what you're sharing is that you had the awakening first, and you went to all these realms, and then the plant medicine confirmed where you were.
yes.
Because it's like, there's, to be really clear, these plant medicines do allow us to go out into realms of consciousness that are not, for many of us, normal, quote, everyday levels of consciousness, especially when we're not fully awakened. And
Mhm.
yet, it's also really important to know, from my perspective, that they don't take us anywhere that we cannot go and don't go naturally as humans by ourselves.
Yes.
Really, like they just open doors, and we, without the medicine, we can and do go as humans everywhere
Hmm.
naturally. This is our
Hmm.
birthright, is to expand and be alchemists of energy across all space and time. So I actually
Yes.
really love that, and you mentioned something really quickly earlier, that your awakening was really quickly and maybe not meant to happen in that way. And I'll just offer the counterpoint that of course it was meant to happen that way, because it did.
I'm going to pause here and wrap up part one. In part two, Aaron and I go deeper into plant medicine, embodied integration, shamanic perspectives, and the role of myth and symbolism in consciousness, including a really interesting exploration of dragons and how our perception of them shapes memory and meaning. And if this first part resonated, you're definitely going to want to join us for part two. It builds on everything we started here and opens into some really rich territory. Check out the show notes for links on how to contact us. Until then, take care. Thanks for joining in our experience.